How has, just start from the beginning, how's everything been this week? How's training been? What's been going on?
I've done some more work, kind of 11v11 and sort of patterns of play, things like that. Again, it's nice to have a free week. There's no guarantees of what that gives you at the end of it, but at the same time, I think for us, in terms of the start that we had and remembering that the squad as a whole didn't come together until after the season had started, it's been nice to be able to be on the training pitch.
Yeah, you just spoke about that, obviously, not on the squad. Where are you, would you say, in terms of where you would like to be down the line?
I think there's still quite a lot of room for improvement, there's no doubt about that. Whether that's, again, just individuals' fitness, whether that's them getting used to environment, whether that's coming together as a group, combinations, all of those things. But that's, again, I would suggest that there'll be quite a lot of teams in that position. So I'm not using that as an excuse, but that's just a genuine answer in terms of, I think only naturally there should be room for improvement, but at the same time probably the teams are coming up against will also be improving. So as I said, that doesn't guarantee anything come the weekend and points and performances, but I think you just feel better in terms of the information that you can get the players to hopefully understand.
We'll talk a little bit about injuries. Things getting better from your perspective?
In the main, yes, I think so. The two lads returned from international duties injury-free. Jordan Rossiter's been back on involved in training today, so this week he'd been doing a bit of individual work to get him up to speed, but he's actually joined in training today, so that's a positive for him, and he's saying he's feeling good, which is obviously what we want. You'd have to remind me who else that sort of we were missing out.
Jordan Rossiter, just quickly, how far away do you think he is from returning?
I think he probably needs at least another good week's training in terms of with the group, certainly. But for me, we'd spoke about a couple of weeks, and we're probably, I don't think we're ahead of schedule, but at the same time, Jordan has sort of been pushing to train. I think we've not held him back, but sided on the air of caution in terms of he hadn't had too much football in his legs to try and give him the best chance, so he's not going to pick up if potentially a different injury. So we're pleased with him, and I'm sure he enjoyed being back out there with the lads rather than kind of that almost loneliness of being with one of the staff running around the pitch and doing different drills. So good news, but I would say at least another week's training.
I think you said on Saturday Toto went off with some ice on him. How is he?
Yeah, he didn't train on Monday, but he's trained since, so all good, nothing serious, but I think it quite sort of a neural injury. I think there's an understanding in the medical department of why he was feeling what he was, trying to give him some work and exercises to get through that, and obviously that's worked because, as I said, he only missed about on Monday's training.
So he'll be fine for tomorrow?
Yes, yeah.
Josh Feeney obviously got his first minutes for the club. How is he after his first kind of half an hour?
Yeah, I think although it was only half an hour, I think he was could feel that in his body, but again, a real positive for us, another option, and someone that we think can come in and have a good impact for us. The proof will be when he gets really up to speed and he's playing week in, week out, because like every single player they'll be judged on performances, not on where they've come from or who they've played for. So we'll see, but certainly from my point of view, pleased because we identified him quite early on, and have had to be patient to get him out on the pitch for us.
Is he close to being able to do a full 90 minutes?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that's out of the realms of possibility now. But again, what I would sort of add to that is if you cross that white line, you judge the same as everyone else. I think the sort of reality and, I guess, being fair, we play pre-season games so players can get up to speed. So Josh has missed out on some of that, at least, certainly with ourselves, and had a mixed sort of pre-season in terms of the minutes that he was exposed to. So it's still very much he's one that, like I say, I still think will improve by being on the training pitch every day and, you know, hopefully being involved in more games.
And KOD, how's he been?
Josh is the opposite. Sorry, he's one where we have had sort of bad news in terms of the scan on his calf. That showed a relatively significant injury, so we'll be out. He'll be out and be missing for us for probably a month and a half, something like that. A week of that's probably gone now, but certainly not the news that we wanted or the player himself. I think I've said it before. There's an individual there, a person, a human being that is desperate to be able to get out on the pitch and play football. And at the minute, or you know, for a little while, we knew that it was an element of risk attached to when we took Josh, but his body's kind of been letting him down, and he's not been able to showcase his talent. So, you know, within that, it's easy to, in one sense, to kind of get almost angry about it and frustrated. I think if you put yourself in his shoes and think about how it must be for him, you know, that can't be easy at all. So, you know, we'll give him the support. We're certainly working him hard in terms of what we can do in the gym. So when he does get back, hopefully he's, you know, in the best shape that he can be, and can get back up to speed very quickly. But, you know, I've got to be honest and say that, you know, as someone who never suffered that sort of one long-term injury towards the end of my playing days and missed very little other than that, you know, I can only imagine how frustrating it must be to not being out there doing what you love to do. So I think we have to sympathise with that, albeit, of course, it doesn't help us in terms of, you know, trying to get points and win games of football.
Is he doing his rehab here?
Yes, he is, yeah.
And is there anyone apart from those that I mentioned that are any more concerns apart from those?
We've got one doubt, but I think the conversation today afterwards was that we're hopeful that player could be involved tomorrow.
You mentioned Luca Hall and Aaron Pierre on an international duty.
Yep.
Both come back fit and fine. Obviously, Aaron will have played 2 games.
Yep.
How are they both feeling?
Oh, good. You know, I think in Aaron's case, obviously, more travelling. That's what I would say. You know, quite a long trip, realistically, away, but got two games under his belt. I think he won one, lost one. But I'm sure he's, you know, proud to represent his country. And then in Luca, they had a really good victory that gives them a chance of qualification still. So when I saw him this morning, he was certainly in good spirits and hopeful for, you know, the next time that they can qualify.
With things obviously getting better on the injury front, we spoke about Josh Sweeney, that leads to giving you more options of, you know, squad rotation and stuff. We've seen obviously up front George Lloyd coming in for John Marcus. Is that just you know, playing for your place kind of?
Yeah, there's competition for places, and I think said that last week where it was the first time that I think we'd had, or the second time potentially, a full bench, but I think we're of real sort of competition. And if we can get everyone fit, then there'll be people actually missing out on the match day squad. So I guess an heads up for you guys as well is when that happens, it's not because of suddenly falling out with people or anything like that. I can pick 18 on a match day, and I think we've ended up with one more in the squad than I thought we would have done, which we're grateful for, don't get me wrong. But if everyone is fit, I think there's 4 lads that miss out, and that's, in reality, that's probably at most football clubs and a few more on top of that, I would suggest. So it's normal, it's part and parcel of it, but what I want to try and do is use that to raise standards, to drive standards in terms of competition for not only starting places but on the bench. And of course sometimes that might be picked from a positional point of view and cover. Not that we had, but, you know, for argument's sake, we had 5 forwards that weren't in the starting lineup. Probably a bit stupid putting all 5 on the bench. It wouldn't make sense. But at the same time, you know, there's still competition, like I said, to make sure you at least got an opportunity of getting on the pitch and being in that 18.
Is that what, obviously Taylor Perry wasn't in the starting 11 on Saturday, was that just a similar thing, or was that more positionally wise, because obviously you didn't have Luke Hall, and what was the thinking behind that?
No, I think Taylor had come in and done well in a couple of games, and I think said afterwards was unfortunate to not get the nod and be in the team, but bringing Funzo in, I think him and Alex coming into the squad, and I think certainly in Funzo's case, I said I think he gives us something a bit different than what any of the players do, Taylor included in that. But as you know, like I said, was unfortunate. But if the couple of performances before that, and kind of what I've certainly said to him is that that's been a step forward and a step in the right direction for him to give me more food for thought. Because before that, he was very much on the periphery. You know, I'm not going to lie about that. That's where I viewed it. But his performances, you know, didn't go unrecognised. So yes, at the minute he dropped out of the team. But as I said, from my point of view, very much more in my thoughts. And that's, again, for me, that's how it should be. It's easy for players to sulk if they want to, or they can try and do something about it. So when an opportunity comes along, you have to try and take it. And I think, in fairness to Taylor, that's what he's done.
What's he been like behind the scenes? Because it must be difficult when you know you're on the periphery as a player. How has he worked his way back into that?
I think, in fairness to him, he's very kind of level. If anything, though, I think he has shown on occasions a willingness to push himself more. And I think that's what we want. That's what we're trying to tell the players, everybody, is don't kind of be happy just being average. You know, you can go out and train out there and do okay. I want them to want to be the best player in training. I want them to be the best player in games, and I think that's what drives competition, and it also improves people. Because as I said, you can just stay the same, but eventually you'll go backwards if that's the route you take. So we always try and push the players, but I'm sure everyone's aware that part of that has to come from the individual as well, and what they want to be. You know, do they just respectfully just want to play for Shrewsbury Town, or they want to actually try and get a move higher up? I would hope it's the latter, because in the end that benefits everybody, benefits the player, the team, potentially the football club. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what we have to have within the squad.
Results-wise, it's been a difficult start to the season. How are the players in the dressing room? How are they reacting?
I think the media guys here have just been in the building, and I think they've heard a very lively place to be. So from that point of view, I'm not. It's hard for me to say that, you know, that they're down, certainly, because I haven't seen that. I think we are aware that we, you know, have been on the wrong side of results in this early part of the season. At the same time, I think there's an awareness of who we've played, and then to follow on from that, there's also an awareness of how tough the league is that we've talked about on many occasions. I think I've just read Richie Wellens' comments on it, and I don't know if he's pinched my quote of the 16 teams. I think he said 15 or 16. So that straight away gives you an indication of how tough this league is. So we know we're not going to certainly have it all our own way. And you know, my mindset is very much you move on to the next game. You might have a quick look back. There might be things that you want to show the players to help them again improve, or highlight things that we've done wrong, some things that we've done well. But it's on to the next game, and you know, I think that's the way that the players seem to be approaching it. But part of that also, I think, is you can sometimes mask how you feel, or the proof is when the whistle goes tomorrow. So I can tell you training's been brilliant, I can tell you training's been rubbish. Ultimately, what matters is when that whistle goes and what type of performance do we get, and in the end, what result do you get? But certainly I've not seen any signs of a group that are, you know, down in the dumps and, you know, sort of fearing the games that are coming up.
Is there frustration on your part, maybe from the manner of some of the goals you've conceded?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. And again, stats, look at some. I think you have to delve into them a little deeper to get any true reflection on near enough any stat. Even if we said shots, they might have had 50 shots, they might have been where I'd have saved them. So they're pointless shots. But there was one that I saw that I think we've had the most errors leading to goals. And again, that's kind of a bit vague, as in, well, how do we really judge an error? I'm assuming, as an example, and not picking on him, but Mal Benning gave the ball away last week for their third goal, I think it was, or second, sorry, and they scored. And 100% it was an error, but there were still other things after that could have, done better as well, which compounded that probably initial mistake that I'm guessing might have gone down in terms of the stats. But there's no doubt we gave some poor goals away that if we're saying we know how difficult it's going to be, that only adds to it, and you're making life a lot harder for yourself. Try and make teams earn the goals. And again, there's always different ways of looking at it. For instance, Wrexham's first last week, I was frustrated with, I think we make 3 errors within that goal. If you're Wrexham, I would dare say you're looking at it and saying that's a really good goal. So there is obviously a bias depending on, where you're looking at it from. But we do need to be better on, cutting out basic mistakes that I think everyone in the stadium can see.
What can you do about that when it is maybe an individual error? They aren't things that happen all the time. How do you work on that?
I don't think you do, is the honest answer. You can maybe put an arm around a player, you might get into the play depending on the character, you might talk about it, you might try and simplify. So we've done that a little bit on a couple of occasions where perhaps we've looked to play out a little bit and then said, right, scrap that, because then in some ways it can ease the pressure from the player, rather than receiving a ball just outside the box or inside the penalty area. If we're going up towards the halfway line and we're kicking the ball longer, well, that's took that part of it out of the equation. But that comes down to confidence, and you'll get some people, and I'll use him as in listen to some things on him this week, Russell Martin, they just won't go away from it. And he's had success, let's be honest, but there'll also be mistakes. And then you'll get other people, and I'm probably one of those, that I will try and tweak things to help the players in certain situations. In my opinion, I wouldn't say one's wrong and one's right. It's just what you feel, and maybe levels you're working at, things like that, the players that you have. But fundamentally, it's down to individuals just making good decisions on the pitch. And I think what you don't want them to do is then just become overly fearful. So when the ball does arrive, they're a nervous wreck. So you have to try and keep some confidence in the players, and some of that might be simply you're in the starting lineup again. Go and show what you can do. The little almost subliminal messages that you're giving to players. But players aren't, as much as footballers can get a bad rap and say that they're not the brightest at times, players aren't stupid. Nearly enough everyone knows if you've had a bad game or you've made a bad mistake. It's then how you learn to deal with that. Some of that can come with experience, but you just hope that you're not in that situation as a player.
Yeah, because taking on from your point where you were saying, just that fear of not being afraid of having the ball. Is that something you can maybe not do on the pitch, but something you can talk about kind of away from the footballing side to?
We've definitely spoke about it, but again, words are easy, and I think this job is so much of it. You feel like you've had a good week, you've said the right things, and it gets to the weekend, does it happen? Or even in training, you're sure. We've had an example this week that I'm not going into too much detail about, but we highlighted something. We go on the training pitch, and then the same thing happens, and you're like, it's only 10 minutes ago we've just been talking about this. So you're then relying on players taking information on board, whether that's as a team or as an individual. There's kind of within the game, I guess, football intelligence you speak about, and sometimes you might have an individual that academically isn't the brightest, but might be a really intelligent and understand the game. sometimes you get vice versa, and sometimes you get both at either end of the spectrum. But you know, ultimately, again, it's the players get information here. That's all I'm going to say. And at most football clubs, they will, of course, they will. But it's whether or not players actually can really take that on board, and then that sometimes can flip back to myself and the rest of the staff, as in, you know, are we asking people to do something they can't do? Or, you know, at what point do you sort of give up on that and say, right, we have tried, but they can't do it? Or do you keep working at it to see eventually the penny drops? And that's a conundrum as a part of being, you know, their sort of guide, if you like.
But just finally for me, Charlton tomorrow, how are you feeling going into that another home game?
Yeah, the last time we were at home, which is what we've referenced, is we had a good result, a good victory, a clean sheet. So I think the lads should be relatively confident. I know we've had a game in between that. But at the same time, I think we're coming up against another team that are 100% in that group that we spoke about. And I think if you were probably trying to rank a 16, would be towards the top end of that 16 teams. You know, Nathan's gone in there, a proven record. Maybe a couple of people a little surprised, perhaps, when he went in there. He wouldn't have gone there without, I'm sure, certain promises and belief and backing that he believes he can get them up to the Championship first and foremost. And they've started the season off, you know, pretty well. I think they're fifth. I think played a game more, but you know, no surprise that they will be up there. Again, signed a lot of good players to add to what they already had, and look very difficult defensively. I think the record's been good, and what we've watched certainly haven't given too many chances away. So that's something we'll be conscious of. But yeah, yet another. No game's easy, let's be honest, but certainly against a team that, like I said, the expectations are very much to be at the top end of the league.